Our culture has left Christianity behind. It seeks to form us in its own image. Just like Daniel and his friends, young followers of Jesus must find a new way to embody their faith, one that's faithful to Jesus' teachings and one that is creatively missional towards culture. This is our calling. This is our battle. This is the Daniel generation. Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of the Daniel Generation. This is the first episode, by the way, that we're recording it fully on video. I'm Drew Lowen, your host, and I have a very special couple guests for you today. Today's episode is called
The Boys.
The Boys. So I have three of my best friends in the whole world on the show today. If you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves.
I'm Ryan.
My name is Aaron.
And I'm Tyler.
How you guys doing?
Great.
Good.
Doing really good,
Never
man.
better.
Never
Yeah.
better.
You're in
Excited
town.
to be here.
Long time
you're
no see.
back, man. I'm
That's
so
great.
excited that you're here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I haven't seen you guys in
Let's do it.
like 6 months? At least?
I think
Yeah.
October.
I've been married for 6 months and you left after the wedding.
Wow.
So
Drew,
He's
I
not bitter at
missed
all,
you.
yeah.
no, I'm not. I needed more time with the wife. He had to go.
Oh, okay, yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, so we wanted to bring these three on today to talk a little bit more about what we finished off with Jim today, and that's about community. If you guys listen to that podcast, you'll remember at the very end I mentioned three guys that I had really close, intimate community with, that we shared every part of our life together, and here they are in the flesh, and you can actually see their faces right now if you're watching the video on our YouTube channel. Here they are. And so these are the three guys that I share everything with. We walk together. And even though I live 9 hours away, I feel like at any moment I can call one of them up and share what I'm going through. So we wanted to just bring you guys into that and share with you the story of how we sort of cultivated that community and how it's benefited our walk with Jesus. So whose fault was all this?
I feel like it was. Well, no, because this was Mr. Hurley's math class. Is where this all started. This is where
That's
this
probably
all started.
true, yeah.
2012, fall of 2012.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going to blame the Lord, but
Whoa! This is not that kind of podcast, bro.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, we glorify the Lord here, Tyler.
I must have been a
Like,
pretty
he's giving
late
the credit.
addition then to it because I
Yeah.
was not in Mr.
Yeah.
Hurley's.
you were about a year. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
This is
Yeah.
Pinnacle.
Well, you went to a
Pioneers,
different school.
Fear the near. Fear the near.
Nope.
But yeah. Yeah, I think that's where it all started.
Yeah.
well, that's where we met.
Yeah.
So that's where me, Aaron, you, Tyler, and Drew. Well,
Yeah.
I knew Drew for a little bit, but like that's
Yeah.
where like we all like three
Senior
were
year
like,
of high school, that's where we all met.
yeah, and we just didn't start off great.
We didn't even really click as like a
Honestly,
trio.
yeah.
You know, we had like our individual relationships and we knew
Tyler
that
was
we all loved
president
Jesus.
of-
Yeah, they
High
thought
school.
I was
Oh, that's
snotty
hilarious.
because I was student body president.
Yeah.
And people knew who I was, and I didn't know them until
Yeah.
senior year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're still bitter. I still get crap for it all the time.
Well, I think it really began even a couple years after we met because
Yeah.
we were roommates freshman year. And
Yeah.
the very end of that is when we actually became good friends.
Yep, second semester.
Second semester. And I would say it was next year you and I started meeting pretty regularly after.
Yeah.
And we started trying to bring Aaron into that. But it was always kind of tough, right? Like some weeks one of us couldn't be there or it was just like super
Right.
surface level. And we always wanted to be intentional, but it never
Yeah.
quite clicked. And
Right.
then at some point Ryan started showing up and it's still like it just never gelled for about 2 years. I think we tried to make it work. And then what was it? It was like 2017. What changed? Do
No,
we know?
I think it was earlier than that.
Was it earlier
I'm
than
bad
that?
with years.
Yeah, me too.
Give me more.
It was
time context.
after
What do you think?
we were
Aaron?
in the dupe. That's when it like really
Okay.
started coming together.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So, and I'm not
Which is
picking fun, but I
where
think
me and Ryan,
sometimes
Aaron and Ryan live.
examples of bad community push us towards what we really wanted.
No, that's
I'm
okay,
serious.
That's very
I
true.
can take this one.
Yeah,
very
Ryan. So
I'll take us
when you
away.
have something that
Yeah.
you know isn't working,
Yeah. Well, okay. Starting out in college, we got together, Aaron, myself, and 4 other guys that were, part of church and part of some of the different groups that we were involved with, and got together, made a house out of it, and all really awesome guys, to be honest. Just all of us were great friends. We were all following the Lord and like actually had real relationships with Jesus, but we started to find that our community became a little bit toxic when we were together.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it was just we were all getting pulled down at the same time for whatever reason. And after the first year, I think Aaron and I both started to realize that. We actually lived there another year, but during that year, we started to actually connect with these two, and it helped a lot. But I mean, tell me your side of that living situation.
Yeah, like initially, it was a great idea. All solid dudes. We all love Jesus. But then you just kind of, when you're not intentional with it, when you're not like keeping each other accountable, and you're not like just honestly respecting each other in your spaces, like it can become what it was. Like it can just deteriorate, and it wasn't great. And it was, the word you said was toxic. Like it became toxic. Like I didn't want to come home. Like I did not want to come home and eat food because the dishes, well, there's no dishes to eat food on. Like there was literally.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That brings up something that I just thought of. I think we all thought that we were automatically going to have this amazing community because we all happened to be Christian. And we thought of other people that had done the same thing. Other people had lived together in college, had these great relationships that last forever. And we thought, yeah, that's just going to happen. And those things don't happen automatically. Takes a little more intentionality, like you said.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, and I think that was the tough thing for us to cultivate is what was the balance between having like an accountability group where we're like, oh, did you read? Did you do this? Where it was superficial and almost legalistic. What was the balance between that and something that was almost organic but still was intentional? I think that's what took long. I mean, because you guys had that experience, and I remember we would avoid going over there because
I remember that.
Yeah.
He'd like invite you, and you're like, no.
I'm starting to remember, because not that we prepared too much for this, because we just love each other. So a turning point that I remember, because we didn't want to meet at their house, is a really good place where I think a lot of this started was at Tempe Town Lake.
Yeah. That's right.
Yes. So we started meeting there and having conversations removed from the bad house. And so that was, I'm starting to remember we would meet there.
Yeah.
And they were super good. I remember like I love those times.
Yeah.
Like, and we just kept wanting to do that.
And I think what you mentioned about like the accountability and what can be perceived as legalism, I think it's when you try and do those things outside of knowing each other well. So if you just put on like a certain set of expectations and rules, but there's not a depth of like trust and already knowing each other, then that just stays superficial and fake, and it doesn't work. So I think it took us all time to actually trust each other, know each other, and develop that, but then those things come later.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're right. We all had to kind of cultivate our own relationship in a one-on-one sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Before, as a group, it clicked. And
that's how we did it.
Yeah, and I'll just add, every group that I was in, or whatever you want to call it, a life group, a Bible study, a discipleship group, up into this point was created for me by someone else.
Right.
As a high school kid, as a college kid even, there were groups that I was a part of that there was a leader, defined leader, that said, hey, you four, come meet me on Wednesdays and we'll go through whatever we did. And at some point we turned 22, 23 years old. We finished college, and no one's necessarily going to start a group with you at that point. And we had to start to find each other and actually try to meet together in that way. So that was a transition period for me. And for a while, there were a few iterations where I was like, all right, I want these three guys, or I want those three guys, or, and none of that ever panned out. We'd meet a couple weeks and it was kind of forced, and it would just fade away.
See, this is why I blame the Lord. We all ended up with each other.
Yeah.
We might not have been each other's first picks, but we just kept being there. Like we kept being the friends that were still there over and over through each season.
well, I think a big part of that is we were committed to the idea of how important it was from the beginning. Even if it was messy and you know, different iterations of it weren't working. Yeah. All four of us knew that we needed something like this. And I think we're, in a sense, kind of called to sort of cultivate it. And I know for myself, it's something I yearned for. And I think that's true of all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I just feel like that was it. We just knew the need we had.
Yeah.
And like we just decided to like trust each other enough to like, all right, let's see what God can do with that and just go from there.
Yeah.
I would say for me, like a year or two before it finally clicked, and it was, we were saying at first it didn't work and it would look different. I think the year or two before that, I was praying for friendships like we see with Jonathan and David. Like I feel like that was a cry of my heart the first 2 years of college, to actually have other men who there was like this deep friendship and love for each other.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember some conversations we had about that. I think it was sophomore or junior year, where there's this idea in our culture that intimacy is only for sex, right?
Right.
But
Romantic relationships.
yeah, like it's only someone that you're romantically involved in. But I think the whole premise of this sort of group that we have is that we're pretty intimate with each other, but it's a completely different sort of, Jonathan David type intimacy, where we're running deep together, we're going hard and fast after Jesus, and we're in the thick of each other's lives. And there's something so special about that.
Yeah, I like what you said there. And for me, again, talking about that transition, I think a lot of people listening are in that young adult, okay, I'm out of college. What do I do? How do I follow Jesus in this young adult time of my life? And for me, there were, again, all these forced groups that didn't quite work. And then there was this group of guys that we started meeting with, and just the intentionality of that
Yeah.
really helped.
So when it all started to click, and I kind of want to move into this and just talk about the benefit of it, because I mean, obviously it was something we had to work for and cultivate, and it was messy. We had to learn to trust each other.
Yeah.
And there was all sorts of ups and downs. And then we had our golden years, right? About a year and a half or two.
The golden
Drew and I lived
years.
together again
Yep.
in a
Yeah.
house after college.
Yeah. And I mean, at that point, we all were out on our own, a little bit more established. We didn't have classes to go to. We had, jobs and things. But we were meeting pretty much, once a week at least?
We met every Thursday.
That's what,
for
every
At
Thursday.
least over a year.
Yeah, almost
That
two.
was the day.
Right.
Yeah.
It was
Holy
every
cow.
Thursday.
Well, talk to me about that, guys. What was,
Yeah.
for you guys, I mean, I can talk all night about why that was great for me, but I want to hear it from you guys. And we talk about this all the time, but I think it's important to see, I mean, obviously that benefited us enough to where we kept doing it, and it's a pivotal part of our lives. But what was it like for you guys to have that consistency and that depth of relationship with each other?
Yeah, one thing that I think I was trying to say this earlier and I forgot what I was trying to say, but there's these different groups of people in your life that get different amounts of that intimacy. And it doesn't mean that people are less of a friend or more of a friend to you. And throughout the week, I'm spending time with all sorts of different people, but to have that one night or whatever it looks like for you, but that one night a week where you're committed to these people and you know that they're already caught up with you and they're going to ask you the hard questions. You're not going to have to wade through the waters of, oh, how's work? Because we talked last week. You already know where I'm at, and you're going to ask me directly more questions that are going to be tougher to answer. And that was the most important part about meeting every week, is we didn't have to keep catching up every time.
Yeah.
What's your major? What do you want to do with your life? Are you dating anybody?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it was just I think it was just the depth of the intimacy, I think, was super, super healing. And just having guys that I can run with that know everything is just so important. I mean, the Bible speaks about confessing your sin to each other to be healed. It really was healing to share everything, every hardship, sin, struggle, but also praise and having people be excited with you is just that's what we were made for. And so that was one of the biggest things for me, was just the depth of the intimacy, not being afraid to go to that place, not being afraid to go there, that place that you're thinking, going there. I don't know. That was huge for me.
Yeah, there's some pretty raw moments for sure.
Yeah. And I agree with Aaron that was the most important part, was the like the depth, but I think for me that came out of the consistency, because I think in theory and in general we all want that, but in reality, like I can speak for myself, at first I didn't actually want to do that. Right. So like, oh, I want to be known. I want people to do that. But in reality, it's like, especially me, that's what I'm saying, because like, it doesn't just happen, right? To be like, I don't necessarily want to just tell anybody everything and what's going on. For me, it has to be like, I trust you. You're still going to be here in a month, in a year. And so for me, the consistency of seeing everybody every week is kind of what bred that depth and that intimacy. It wouldn't have been possible for how God made me if there wasn't consistency. If we were only going to talk once a month, that depth was never going to be there, because I wasn't going to give my heart to people who didn't really care and weren't actually there for me.
Yeah. Well, and I think
That's huge.
yeah. I mean, that's really it, is that we were not just theoretically willing to go there, but time and time again we were giving each other permission to take each other through those hard conversations, you know? So, I mean, there was a couple times where, you know, I know for me, I was a couple times every other week.
I don't know where you're going with this.
I would be going through something tough, whether it was something emotional that, you know, is happening in my heart or like a actual situation. I mean, some of those years, at least, you know, where we were starting to get in our good, consistent meeting phases, were really tough times in my life. I went through at least for me, some of the biggest trials emotionally and mentally. And I could always count on Thursday night, even if I broke down, I knew that there'd be 3 people who would be there to lift me back up again. So, and there was not, at least for me, there wasn't a thing I was afraid to share. Because I knew after we had cultivated it and after it clicked, I knew there was grace there.
Right.
Yeah, I think something unique about our group, and something I didn't realize I would want or even be okay with, was that we were all, and we still kind of are, but we were all in different stages of life. Like, specifically, I think of relationships. Like, I was newly married, and Tyler was engaged. You know, Aaron, you were actually going through a bit of a broken relationship at the time, and Drew was single. And
Still am.
And
Ladies, just letting you know.
You know,
any listeners out there?
Yeah. Yeah, Drew Lowen. So, but what I was trying to say is that for a while I thought maybe I was looking for a lot of people that looked exactly like me, and not looked, but people that were living the exact same stage of life, whether it's the type of job or just the relationship status or whatever you want to call it. For a while, I was looking for a group of 3 guys that were all newly married and worked an office job just like me. And then I realized how valuable it was to just for us all to come meet and be in such different places and have different types of lives and different problems and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never really thought about that till you just mentioned it. That was really huge. I think that's a big part of it. There was some diversity of experience and opinion that, you know, was a big part. Looking back, I think that was a big part of some of the benefits, at least for me, was seeing people that aren't stuck in the same ruts I'm stuck in.
That is huge. I think just because of the stage of life that we were each in, like being newly married, like having the advice and like, this is what works when you just get married, and like what it looks like to just be married, and like after the honeymoon, like, and like hearing that and like not like, and kind of having a reality check with that.
Yeah.
Like that was really important. And I don't know, just like also realizing like when you're single, like it's important to take time for yourself. And like, I don't know, there was just lessons and tips and advice from each person that I could get, like that we probably wouldn't have been able to share if we were all in the same place, you know?
So not that you have to be in different places, but you definitely don't have to be in the same
Exactly,
place.
yeah.
And I think people get hung up sometimes of, I want to go to a young singles group, or I want to meet a group of young married guys and just, you know, go from there. And I don't think that's always, or I don't think it should be what you desire to have. It might not even be the best.
Yeah.
I think the other thing too is we weren't just guys who were like, let's talk about all the stuff that's wrong with our lives. We had a lot of fun together too. And that was almost more important than talking about the stuff that stunk.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. What were
Well, I was just gonna say, so stay on the fun one, but just to cut in first, that's what I'd wanted to say is that it's not like each time we met looked the same. Like sometimes we would pray, sometimes we would worship, sometimes we would play cards, sometimes we would just catch up. You know what I mean? It's not like we keep talking about the organic nature of how it started, but I think that it stayed that way. That there wasn't an agenda or a plan. The only plan was that we had to meet, and whatever we needed,
that's it. Whatever we needed
personally or as a group, that's what we did.
Yeah.
So we also had fun. If anybody wants to.
No, I love that. Like whatever we needed. Like even if we were in the middle of a game, like someone's just like, guys, this has been bothering me. We would like stop the game and like pray and like talk about it.
Yeah.
Speaking of the game, Dominion. You know that's what we did.
The key to any sort of Christian discipleship group is the game is the game Dominion.
What's really hard about the group dynamic is when most of the people get burned out on the game, but then that one person
But Ryan still wants
just
to
hasn't
play.
had enough.
What do you do?
Dude, are we playing Dominion tonight?
And I'm like,
I mean, it
no,
was
bro, I need to
brought.
talk about my heart. I don't have time for demand.
I can see the game from here. I want to play so bad.
Oh my gosh.
But I like, Tyler, I like what you said about that there wasn't any structure. And I remember some nights we'd all kind of sit down and we'd catch up a little bit. And then, one person would have something to share and an hour would go by and we'd all encourage that one person, whoever it was, and then we'd leave. And sometimes that was exactly what that person needed. And we'd all pray over that person if we felt led. And that was it. And we didn't have to, structurally go from person to person. What's your high? What's your low? What do you prayer requests? It didn't always have a structure like that. And I think that was beneficial in times when someone came to the night and said, I am just struggling with something and need to share it.
So good. Yeah.
And I think that worked because all of us had this, almost other focused nature to us when we were meeting. It wasn't like you had to be heard. If you really needed to, you could take that space and it was fine because the rest of us, even if we were going through stuff, knew that whether it's throughout the week or next week, we could still reach out and talk to the whole group or even some of the group about those things, and it didn't feel like someone was hogging the whole night if they needed that, because there was that trust there.
Yeah, you have to come to the group with a selfless attitude for that to actually happen.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's gonna feel like you missed your chance to share every time, but in reality, you're just thinking about the others. And
I think one huge thing that is just central to all of it was just like we just let God move however he was going to move that night. Like some night you mentioned it, like worship, like we would just worship together and like get as silly or crazy as we wanted to and like just pray over each other and like just let the Spirit move. Like it was just so real. Like I don't know. I keep hitting the idea of the no agenda was super important, and it just allowed us to be organic. And I don't know. I just think letting God move through it, even if it's just like we're just gonna chill on this couch and just I don't know talk about girls. I don't know, but like
Who does that?
yeah,
We would
right?
never.
Oh, sorry. We'll edit that out. But I don't know. But like in other days, it was just like we like got deep in like I don't know topics, and we got deep in each other's lives, and like. I don't know. I feel like some nights we would go out and do stuff, but I can't remember right now.
Oh, we definitely did.
Yeah.
But
I was going to say, that's what's
the
important.
point.
I can't think off the top of my head, but of the Thursday night was like that night, but obviously we're just friends. So there was Friday and Saturday nights where we just hung out for more fun or with other people in groups and all of that. So there's definitely multiple aspects, and there's just not this pressure for it to look a certain way. Because I think that's what we want as humans sometimes. It's like, tell me how to do it. Tell me how to get it started. Tell me how to keep it going.
Yeah.
And there's not always a formula.
Yeah.
And with that said, all of the things that we're talking about are not a formula.
Yeah.
Like obviously the organic part should work for any group of guys, but some of the things that we're talking about, it's not a perfect system. It's not a perfect thing, and we don't know all the answers. We're just kind of testifying to something that God did through us for for this time
Right.
and
Yeah.
encouraging through that. But I
Because
mean,
maybe there's a group of guys with their combination, they like need to do the same thing every time.
or need a structure,
Or
need,
need
a
more
book
of a
or
structure,
something to go through.
and like have a
Yeah.
goal and like this is what we're meeting to do.
Yeah. Or even it could be a different number. I mean, I know for us, we experimented with 3, we experimented with 5 or 6 or, and it never worked because I think a big part of it was the chemistry that we all had. I mean, just as friends and as people, there was a certain dynamic once the 4 of us clicked that the 4 of us had. And even if one of us wasn't there, it wasn't really the same. So there was something special about that. And that's the thing is you just really have to press in with prayer who those people are that you want to run with, who those people are that you click with. And I think one of the hardest lessons for us to learn was it's okay to have a limit on like this. It was almost like a covenantal relationship between us if you think about it, where we're committed to each other. And it was okay if it wasn't less or more, because you can also be a part of creating communities and other spheres that do the same thing. You don't have to have the whole party show up at once. There was something special about just the 4 of us every time.
Yeah, and like we were saying earlier, we didn't have to start with, catching up every time. And part of that is because there was just this group that was committed to meeting every week. And it's not an exclusivity thing. It's not a trying to exclude people or make them feel bad about it. But there's a time and place to say, these are my people that I need to just connect on a deeper level with.
Yeah. And I think that can be hard. Like that there can be maybe feeling guilty for needing that, or I don't know how to put it, but like you said, that there has to be some boundary around it or something to protect the integrity of what you are trying to achieve, of the deepness and the consistency.
Yeah.
That you can't expect 30 people to show up every week, and you can't have time for 30 people to share their hearts or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, don't feel bad for trying to almost protect that space that you have between those guys. Because I think, like, maybe every now and then we'd have a guy ask to hang out on that night, and then we'd have to tell him why, and it would just feel kind of funny. But, like, I don't know. I just think it was super important to, like, no, this is what we need. This is what we need. Like, we need to do this. Like, it's not something we're, like, we get to, like,
It's not like
exclude
a
people.
club.
Yeah, it's not a club. This is, like, this is just life as guys. And, like, this is what we need to survive. So, I don't know.
Yeah, that's good. Well, kind of moving on from that, maybe get a little deeper here, as deep as you guys are comfortable with. Personally, what were some of the biggest benefits just in your own walk with Jesus, in your own life, that meeting together consistently like this, caused or changed in you? What changed about you? Or maybe just some highlights, like just reflect for a moment on who we were before, who we are now. How did this change us? How did this affect our walk with Jesus?
That's good. I got to think on that.
Well,
I'll go last because mine.
Yeah, I'll start because it's my question and I can kind of just riff on it.
Yeah, set the tone. How deep are we getting, Drew?
Oh, there you go.
Go
right?
there, Drew.
Well, I know for me, it was honestly answered prayer, because I'm a deeply relational person, but I had walked with this husk over my heart for a long time where I wouldn't really let anybody in, not even my own family, not even myself. There was this deep wall that I had kind of frozen around my core. And I knew I needed to break it open, right? And I had been praying through this. I'd been reading all sorts of books about being emotionally healthy and about being, someone who's more loving, someone who's more relational. But like all the head knowledge doesn't mean anything if it's not actually being worked out in your life. And so for me, this was like slow chipping away at this giant wall I had built. And it forced me to be more self-aware. It forced me to be more accountable to myself. And really, in a lot of ways, it forced me to challenge the complacency I had with my relationship in the Lord in certain areas. Because we all fall into these ruts where we do certain things really well with God and certain things not as well. And all 4 of us, I think, have different things. And so for me, that was really beneficial, because my thing might be this and Aaron's thing was that. And seeing Aaron do that made me realize, wow, there's something so beautiful about the way he walks with God that I don't have. I want to cultivate that a little more. So it really just felt like it shaved off a lot of my edges, but in a safe way where I wasn't trying to force myself to be someone different, but I could naturally allow, just like talking with you guys allowed me to grow into who God wants me to be in a really unique way. I honestly think it's changed me forever as a person.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
That's the first time you've heard that?
Hey.
Oh.
I think for me, personally, during that season that we're talking about, a year and a half, I was newly married, newly working full-time in a pretty demanding job. I still have the job, which is good. But, you know, we all have our vices that we bring. And for me, all of a sudden, I had this, and I still struggle with this obsession with work that a lot of guys struggle with as young adults, that, okay, I have this ambition. What do I do with it? How about I work 50 hours and, you know, miss a lot of life along the way. And to have you guys expect me to be there on a Thursday night was super important to that, because I had to leave work. I had to make that commitment. And the other thing I noticed is when I was asked every week, you know, how are you doing? How is work? I started to hear the broken record of, oh, busy. Oh, busy. I'm busy. And then all of a sudden it's, okay, no one's forcing me to do this. I am, you know, shooting myself in the foot. And I would never have identified that. And I'm still working on this. But I would have never identified it initially so early on if I wasn't hearing someone ask me, how is work? Every week with that consistency. And so it's been a journey and I'm still learning, but I think you guys have been a super integral part of me finding some balance between family and work and friends and community and, well, Jesus on top of all of that.
Yeah.
But that's one of my big things.
Yeah. Yeah, I have two things that I want to try and articulate. And so the first, personally, about me, I mean, I alluded to it earlier, but I mean, 3 to 4 years ago, like, I wasn't somebody who would just like share my life. And like, you have to ask me questions. You got to keep digging. And so finding a place where I could be honest, I think that was one of the most important things, of learning that you can be honest and you can share what it is that you're actually thinking and struggling through with church, with the future, with the Bible, and have people who don't even blink that they still love you and accept you. And then you've got 3 different perspectives who can speak truth, encouragement, and hope into that situation, that it's not just you in your head. I think that's a huge trick of the enemy, why we don't want the intimacy and we don't want to share, is because then if it's just in our head, it's the same lies and the same fears going around. But once you let other people in on it, then God uses them to bring that truth and to bring that clarity. And so that's been a huge thing of just being honest and still being loved for being who you are. And then the other thing, a huge part of it, Drew and I were in the same program at GCU of the Christian Studies. And so I would just say, of having men who, I mean, at the core of everything that we did was God, that of the Lord, of Scripture, of all that was always the base. So you had people who were taking God seriously and walking with him and trying to be a disciple, that if you just are hanging out with people superficially or casually, they might be committed or they might not, but you wouldn't get to that point where they could push you towards it. So having a friend group where the foundation was always the Lord, and pushing it back towards that.
That's
like, it's not just the boys. It's right. It's God behind it, that he's always the focus, that we're pushing each other towards him.
I mean, it is the boys, but Jesus is just one of the boys.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's super. I love that. Like, absolutely, the main central part of all of it is Jesus. Like, yeah, we joke around, have a few beers. Not me, but you know.
I don't drink beer either.
Yeah, of course not.
It's not beer.
For the record.
For the record. Let the record show.
The record show. But, like, so for me, I think two things as well. Like, one, I just needed people that I could feel safe and comfortable to share the stuff that, like, the enemy could bring shame with easily. Like, every time. Like, some people I can share every time. And get looked at with, like, love and care. And, like, you guys are like Jesus to me. Like, you just, like, loved me in a way that Jesus would. And knowing I had that consistently, like, propelled me further to, like, okay, so, like, God, it, like, helped shape my view of God as a father. Like, this is who he is. Like, they're acting out of this way because that's who they know God as. And it's like, okay, I want to know who God is. And so it, like, further deepened my relationship with the Lord because I wanted to chase after that more and more. I just wanted more of that. So that was huge. And then the second thing is, like, I went through, like you mentioned it, like, a really broken relationship, and, like, not having the boys, like, honestly, would have been detrimental. Like, I don't know where I would be. Like, having you guys just, like, surround me, like, when I just needed, like, shoulders to cry on and, like, jokes to be said, and, like, just, like, I needed you guys in every single way, and you were there. So, like, I don't know, like, if you want a group of guys, like, you need people that can just be whatever you need them to be right then and there.
Yeah.
So,
And let me just add on to that. I think it's interesting to note that we started meeting as guys before you went through some of that.
yeah.
And just as an encouragement, like, this isn't, oh, I need guys now. Let me go find some guys to connect with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
This is
that's
a
what made it
proactive, I'm going to need community, and I need to start now, even if life is perfect
Yeah.
right
yeah,
now.
absolutely.
And you never know when you're going to go through something that is going to require just community being around you, and it's too late when it starts.
Yeah.
When something hits in life, it's too late to just suddenly find guys to connect with.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's what made it sweet, was, like, that. Like, I knew that. I knew I could just, I think I called all of you that night. Like, I called all of you and just, like, was like, I need you right now. And you were there. And, like, I had no doubt that you would be praying for me when we weren't talking, and when we were meeting up, like, you'd still be praying over me, but, like, you would, you know, be there for me in any way that I needed. And it was great.
And
I'm good.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
I was.
No, you go.
No, you bro. No, you go.
No, you go,
Let's
bro.
just okay. Yeah, and I think what you brought up makes me think, like, we've all been so grateful that we have people that we can come to. But another cool thing about being consistent and walking through these things together is at the times when all of us as humans still don't want to share, we have a depth with each other that we can look and be like, "What's wrong with you?
Oh gosh.
What's wrong?"
No. Tyler
drew, like,
was
a
really good
book.
at this, and the rest of.
They're all good at it too, but I can read them all like a book.
Oh man.
But
Which is
and
great.
Hearing you talk too reminded me of the double-edged sword of the friendship of we get to come and have people be Jesus to us, but the other side is that being in an intentional friendship like this, it gives us the opportunity to be Jesus to other people. Like, we're supposed to look more and more like
Yes.
Jesus. So if you don't have people that you're walking through difficult things to, where you can be patient, where you can be loving, then you're not having opportunities to grow and look more like him. So it's not just about us getting that. It also gives us the opportunity to walk out in that ourselves.
I love that. Absolutely. Like that, like, it's not just like, it's putting it into practice.
Yeah.
And, like, that's so vital to your walk with Jesus, is, like, it's so actionable. Like, he's such an actionable man. Like, he calls us to be that. I love that.
I think one of the biggest things too is I learned, I shouldn't speak for all of you, but I learned to not be afraid to really, really, really love you guys. You know, I mean, I was thinking about this on the drive down here. I was, guys, I hate Phoenix, right? Like, I don't like the desert.
What?
I don't like the desert. I don't like the traffic. It's why I moved. It's the desert
10
and the
a.m.
traffic.
traffic and the
There's no
I-17,
seasons. It's miserable. Humans are not designed to live here. It's a testament to man's ignorance, okay? No, I'm just
It's
kidding.
his podcast, so we'll let him get away with it.
Oh my
But
god.
I was driving down, and as soon as I passed through Flagstaff, I was just beaming because I knew who I was coming to see. Because I've been through so much with you guys, and you've carried me through so much, and I feel like I've helped hopefully carry you guys through so much where it didn't even feel like I'd been gone that long for me. Like you guys walked through the door,
mean, yeah,
and it
honestly.
wasn't like, oh my gosh, it was like, oh, what's up, dude? It was like,
I
I saw, dude.
Saw, dude. Yeah. Do you remember what you said last night? You were like, "Oh, it's like I've been gone for 20 minutes."
Yeah. And it genuinely felt that way. It felt like I went to
that's
Tyler's
so
wedding.
good.
I drove to Colorado a week later, and then a week after that I came. But it wasn't. It was 6 months. And there's something special, I think, about just that as a relationship that we all have with one another. It's timeless. Like I know for the rest of my life, no matter where any of us end up, we'll end up at a beach somewhere hanging out, like on a family vacay.
That's right.
And then it'll be like we'll pick up
Sure,
right
get
where we
married.
left off.
My son will not marry your daughter.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, your daughter, no.
y'all will be lucky to have these genes. All right. That's all I'm saying.
These jeans here.
Yeah.
Way too tight.
Dad jokes are starting already. Wait, do you have news?
Yeah.
No, no.
He's shaking.
It's only been 6 months.
All right, we'll see.
Drew, take us somewhere good.
All right. Well, we're getting to about a 45-minute mark. Just to kind of end off, do you guys have any highlights? Whether it's like a good moment, maybe it's sort of like a sweet moment or something funny.
Let's see.
And then we'll kind of wrap this up.
Well, there really was so much.
It's hard to sift through. I mean,
Yeah. Hold on.
Yeah, this is just the first thing that came to mind. I don't even know why. But of everything that we walked through and then me getting married, like having boys who can stand up when you get to a moment like that, who know you and who
So
love you,
good.
like it makes that much deeper. You know what I mean? But that came in from all the highlights of the weekly highlights of all the laughter and the depth and all that stuff then accumulates to when you get to a moment like that I had, like, obviously it was all about the woman that I loved and committing to her for the rest of my life. But behind all of that, I had boys who loved me, and I had almost just as much of a depth. Obviously, it's a different kind of relationship, but just as much depth and love that you guys were there with me too. So I don't know. That's just what came to mind. I don't know why, but
Dang, I was gonna go super light. I was gonna
no,
go
that's
go light,
give us the
no.
light
Okay,
moments that lead up to that.
Yeah. Well, I just think of spades. Like how we just played spades and
It's
how
a card
Drew
game.
it's a card game.
So much
It
fun.
requires 4 people, which is perfect. And you have a teammate and we switch it every time, but like I just remember Drew sucking.
I always lost. No, it's so
Whoever
good.
was with him always lost.
It
And
was
I don't
great.
feel like I had like a bad strategy. It just never clicked.
Dude, you'd be like, oh, I got this. You'd be so confident, throw your card down, and your teammate would be like, what the heck? It was
What
so
plan?
good.
Maybe I'm not good at spades. That's fine. Yeah.
But it was just funny. Like those moments are like, those are hilarious. I love those.
I remember when we were when we finally got everyone together to go camping up in Prescott.
Yes.
That was
that
a
was
great
so good.
It was just a
After
great
Indo-
weekend.
Yeah.
But then I remember 2 moments. First off, I remember when we were like, "Oh my gosh, it's roasting us outside and there's no shade," and so we go, like idiots, we go inside the tent, which is just like. It's like a sauna in there because the sun's hitting the tent.
Shade, right?
And we're all just dying.
And we will not get into it, but fantastic theological
was
conversation
Yeah,
happened in that.
fantastic.
Another podcast for
so
another
maybe
day.
because we were all having heat stroke, we just had like this woke moment where our theology was just.
Ryan definitely got woke.
And then that same night, when we're all in that same tent, and now it's cold outside, so we're all in our sleeping bags. And then we were watching that Drunk History episode that Tyler
my
just
Joan of Arc.
cannot
That's where
get
that came
over.
from.
Oh, I'm way over
Joan
it, but
of
you all know it's hilarious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Give us a quote, Tyler. What's your favorite one?
Oh, I haven't watched it in so long.
I can't even think. Like she's like,
Get this crazy girl back to her home.
Oh my
See, they
gosh.
all know it.
literally. And like all our friends now know it.
Lord Beauregard from that video was a street over from the hotel we stayed at in Paris.
Oh, wow.
No way.
He and his wife just went to Paris.
Yeah, Lord Beauregard.
That's awesome.
cut my hair and dress me in men's clothes. Yeah.
I had to say that one.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Oh, great.
Cut that part out.
No, I can't. It's in there
Okay. Well,
forever.
Ryan.
I remember when Tyler and Aaron left for like 3 months over the summer.
Yes.
And Drew and
we
I
went to Indonesia.
Drew and I, yeah, you will never know because Drew and I had meetings still on Thursdays,
Yeah,
and
it was very different.
it was very different.
It was awesome,
you know,
yeah.
it was very different. We
probably had more
would
fun.
just play video games and
oh, that's great.
And drink
you know,
beer.
drink beer,
Watch
and,
Star Wars, right?
Yeah,
We did. We watched Star Wars.
you know, it's a testament to how you need the whole group. That's what we learned.
I'm just kidding.
Did I say that?
I thought a different lesson was coming.
To spend that in the positive, I was gonna say we all have unique individual
Yeah, I thought that's
relationships
where it
with
was
one
going.
another.
Yeah.
Which is important. Absolutely.
No, I think that's cool that we each can hang out with each other, and it's great. Like I can hang out with Tyler, Drew, and Ryan separately, and it's like, it's great. It's just as good. It's just as sweet.
And it goes back to just being an organic group. Like, we're not 4 guys that some leader at a church said, you 4, let's all meet on Sunday afternoons. Nothing wrong with that. I learned a ton during that time, but now it's been more of a, you know, us-led thing. And that means that each of us wants each of us in the group. And that was a very important part of it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's about it. I mean, I don't know how much more we can talk about what it was and what it still is. We've been saying "was" this whole time, as if
Yeah,
we're just
wait.
like not going to talk to each other ever
What the
again. That's
heck?
kind of sad.
Well, you're the one who moved away.
You
Yeah,
left
let's
us.
just let's just drop
Well,
that bomb. This is
he's the one
recording
who
in
moved
Arizona, and he moved to Colorado.
Yeah.
So.
That's
no, that's
interesting.
true.
Not that
That's
we're going
true.
to talk about it, but the ways that it's sustained since you left.
It actually is crazy.
Yeah. Well, I honestly feel like it hasn't really changed too much, except for the fact that we obviously can't meet once a week. But I don't feel like I'm further away from you guys, like in my
I
heart.
agree.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
In some ways,
Drew and I text most days.
that's true.
As
What?
long as we play Dominion tonight.
We're gonna play Dominion right
Otherwise,
after.
it's over.
That is on the record that we must play.
He needs to follow up on the next episode whether that happened or not.
You do.
Did
I
Ryan
do.
leave the friend group?
Yeah. Find out.
Next up.
So what we thought was a covenant of unconditional love was contingent and completely conditional upon Ryan getting to play Dominion.
Literally.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Well, so there you have it, guys. This was something for me that was one of the most beautiful experiences of
There's
you know,
that was
college
again,
and
bro.
post-college,
Come on.
and still is
Okay, there we go.
one of the most impactful group of friends I think I'll ever have in my life. And it's not just because, oh, it's good friends and we had fun times. It's because God truly did something so special
Amen.
with the 4 of us.
Say it again.
And I think he wants that for his entire body. He wants that for every Christian. So if you're listening to this and you're starting to think, man, I want community like that, it's something that God wants for you. So I would just encourage you to start praying into that. Who might be the people? What are the steps that you need to take in your life to start helping cultivate that? Maybe carve out a night with some friends that you already have and start to allow yourselves to trust each other and go a bit deeper, because I think the fruit of it, as you've heard from all of us just in the testimony of this recording, is beyond what can be formulated with some sort of force dynamic. There is something so special about letting God move among us and with us and through us that even to this day it is still impacting us. So I just wanted to share that with you guys on this episode. That's why we brought them on. And also, I just wanted to record an episode with these guys because it would
The boys.
with the boys because it was fun. And as always, guys, if you have any questions about this episode or the things we talked about, or you just want to hear something else in the next episode and have ideas about things that would be good to cover, shoot me an email at thedanielgen@gmail.com. And again, we are a new podcast, so if you're benefiting from this and you think someone else could, we'd really appreciate it if you left a review on iTunes and gave us a decent rating and maybe shared it with a friend. It really helps us get the message out. But from all of the boys...
The boys.
The boys.
boys.
Oh, sorry. Just say all the phrases we used to say.
Well,
sorry.
we,
just clipped
that was
the
just the
mic
2
thing.
of us.
Yeah.
It was-
Bro.
Bisa bicara.
From all of the bros at the Daniel generation, We'll see you next time.